In the mid-1800s, the bustling, dirt road town of Atchison, Kansas, was home to a local medical practitioner named Dr. Charles Finney. According to local lore, a frantic mother arrived at his door one night holding her 6-year-old daughter, Sallie. The child's appendix was rupturing. Dr. Finney carried her to his basement operating room, but in his haste, he botched the anesthesia. The young girl died on his table during a rushed appendectomy. Fast forward to the early 1990s, Tony and Deborah Pickman purchased the old Finney property. Almost immediately, they began experiencing classic, seemingly harmless phenomena. Lights flickered on their own, and the chains on the ceiling fans would spin without any draft. The activity concentrated heavily in their newborn baby's nursery. The child would wake up crying constantly, and one evening, Tony found 3 of the baby's stuffed animals deliberately removed from their shelves and arranged upright in a perfect circle on the floor. Deborah believed they were dealing with the spirit of the young girl from the local legend. When occupants believe they are dealing with a frightened, lost child, that empathy acts as a psychological blindfold to any actual danger. Look at this historical ledger comparing public records. Census data confirms Dr. Finney lived and practiced in the home, but the column for a 6-year-old named Sallie is entirely blank. The child never existed. This void suggests the entity operated behind a mask. Without a record of a girl named Sallie ever living or dying in the home, the innocent child persona appears to be a convenient fabrication, a way for an unknown force to inhabit the property under the cover of a recognizable local tragic legend. When those teddy bears were arranged in a circle in the Pickmans' empty nursery, it required physical energy. An invisible force was deliberately manipulating the physical space of the home to reinforce the illusion of a playful child. This presence anchored itself to a tragic story that didn't happen, establishing a foothold in the house by ensuring the Pickmans were initially inclined to pity the haunting rather than fear it. Deborah's reaction played directly into this strategy. She treated the entity exactly like a lost child, offering it comfort and openly stating she wanted to nurture it. By doing so, she gave the presence permission to be part of their daily lives. Tony, however, was highly skeptical. He felt uneasy in his own home and actively rejected the idea of the friendly ghost. His refusal to accept the myth made him an obstacle, and he quickly became the sole target for the entity's hostility. Television investigators brought in to document the case recorded bizarre physical anomalies. Sudden, highly localized fires would break out. In one instance, a doll on the staircase burst into flames, but the damage showed the plastic was burned from the inside out, rather than catching fire from an external source. The attacks on Tony became violently physical. He would step out of the shower to find fresh bite marks on his legs. Deep scratches appeared on his stomach and back, sometimes drawing blood. During one filmed investigation, the initials MC were carved into his skin while he was standing in the room. The entity successfully divided the household. It isolated Tony through targeted physical violence, ensuring he lived in constant fear, while keeping Deborah completely docile and unaware through her own misplaced empathy. Once Tony was sufficiently isolated, the entity abandoned the little girl facade entirely during his private encounters. One night, Tony watched a cluster of dark dust particles drift over his bed and slowly take the shape of an older woman dressed in black. As the bedroom furniture began to violently shake, the woman lunged directly at his throat. The forms grew increasingly monstrous. Another evening, the apparition of the little girl approached his bed, let out a deep guttural growl, and transformed into a hunched, dog-like creature with rotting, melting flesh. The psychological manipulation extended to his waking hours. Tony would see his wife Deborah walk past him in the hallway wearing an antique housemaid's outfit. He would follow her into the next room, only to find it completely empty. These shifts from rotting animals to his own wife's stace suggest a deliberate effort to keep the victim in a state of constant confusion, systematically shattering Tony's baseline grip on reality. The haunting then entered a phase of psychological hijacking. The attacks moved from the physical space of the hallways and bedrooms directly into Tony's mind. Tony experienced severe, sudden personality shifts. An intense, dark anger would overtake him, but strictly within the boundaries of the property. The moment he stepped outside the house, his mood would return to normal. This mental intrusion culminated in a terrifying blackout. Tony woke up one afternoon at his parents' house with no memory of how he got there. When he returned to 508 North 2nd Street, he found the family cat stabbed to death and pinned to the kitchen counter. Soon after, he began suffering from severe intrusive thoughts. He reported vivid waking urges to pick up a butcher knife and slit Deborah's throat the moment he walked home from work. The entity recognized it could not force Tony out through scratching and intimidation alone. Instead, it weaponized the father, feeding him violent impulses to trick him into destroying his own family from the inside out. The breaking point occurred at the top of the stairs. Without warning, Tony was violently thrown backward by an unseen force, crashing into the heavy wooden rungs of the banister and snapping several of them in half. Witnessing this undeniable physical attack finally shattered Deborah's protective illusion. The family evacuated the house within 3 weeks. The environment inside the house remained volatile. The landlord later evicted the next tenant after discovering she had painted a large pentagram on the basement floor to conduct dark rituals, drawn by the heavy energy left behind. The Pickmans' experience at the Sallie House demonstrates how easily empathy can be exploited. By the time they realized the girl didn't exist, the presence had already established enough of a foothold to turn the home into a weapon. To this day, investigators capture chilling audio responses in the empty nursery. The Pickman family escaped, but the deceptive predator they invited in remains exactly where they left it, waiting in the dark.